Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I was having trouble getting my mic to work. Sorry.
Oh,
Good morning. I
yes.
was having difficulty as well.
Good morning. Yeah, good. Well, I see everyone is on camera right now. Let me see. I guess we can start. Well, welcome to the Office of Tax Appeals. Um, Before we begin, I would like to let our IT start the live stream. Appellant has elected to have this appeal determined pursuant to the procedures of the small case program. As such, one panel member would be assigned to this appeal, and my name is Eddie Lam. I am the administrative law judge for this appeal. We are currently off the record. We just needed to cover some housekeeping items before moving on. Thereafter, we will get back on the record and the parties will have the opportunities to present their arguments and testimonies. If anytime you are confused, please ask me any questions. Today's hearing is being conducted electronically with the agreement of all the parties. As you are aware, this hearing is being recorded and is being transcribed by Zoom. To ensure an accurate record, please speak one at a time and avoid speaking over others. Speak clearly and at an appropriate volume. If clarification is needed, the hearing may be paused to address it. There are a couple of general rules that I would ask everyone to keep in mind for this hearing. Please state your name before you speak. Do not use the chat feature in Zoom. Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking to avoid any feedback or background noises. This proceeding is being broadcast live, and keep in mind that anything you say and anything visible through your camera can be heard and be seen by the public. As a reminder, the Office of Tax Appeal is not a court. We are an independent appeals body. The Office of Tax Appeals is staffed by tax experts and is independent of the state tax agencies. Are there any questions about what I've just said before we go on the record and introduce the parties? I'll start off with appellant. Mr. Harbour, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And FTB,
No questions.
thank you. All right, we will be on the record. We are opening the record in the appeal of D. Harbour and S. Harbour. This matter is being held before the Office of Tax Appeals. The OTA case number is 230713816. Today's date is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, and the time is approximately 9:30 a.m. This hearing is being conducted electronically with the agreement of the parties. Appellants elected to have this appeal determined pursuant to the procedures of the small case program. As such, one panel member would be assigned to this appeal. My name is Eddie Lam. I am the administrative law judge for this appeal. Now for introductions, can we please have appellants start introducing yourself onto the record?
I'm sorry. My name is David
Yeah,
Harbour. What additional information would you like from me at this time?
I just wanted you to introduce yourself to into the record, but thank you. Can you please state your name again?
David Harbour.
Thank you. Can we please have FTB start introducing themselves into the record?
Yes, Eric Brown, attorney with Franchise Tax Board.
Cynthia Kent, also an attorney with the Franchise Tax Board.
Thank you. As discussed and agreed upon by the parties at the pre-hearing conference and noted in my minutes and orders on December 18, 2024, the issues in this matter are whether appellants have established reasonable cause to support the abatement of late payment penalty, whether appellants establish grounds to support the abatement of the underpayment of estimated tax penalty. There were no objections raised regarding to these issues, and it is entered in accordance with the pre-hearing conference and minutes and orders. I would move on to evidence. Appellants have identified exhibits 1 through 4. FTB had no objections to them, and exhibits 1 through 4 were admitted as evidence in the record through the pre-hearing conference minutes and orders. As of yesterday, appellants have introduced a new exhibit. Let me see. Mr. Harbour, I see that you've introduced a new exhibit showing a summary of the income tax from 2018 to 2022. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. It's all information that everybody's had, information that's been available to all parties. I just summarized it for convenience sake.
Okay, and what is the relevance for introducing this exhibit?
Really just trying to show that this was an anomaly. This late payment, that there's a track record here of timely overpayments, frankly, to both the IRS and FTB. And, trying to prove a point that if we, you know, we overpaid the IRS in that year, there's no reason why our intent was not to timely pay in full, California FTB.
Okay, I see that you just submitted that yesterday, and according to my minutes and orders, we were supposed to submit evidence no later than 15 days before the hearing. Do you have any good cause for the reason of submitting this exhibit late?
Again, we can talk about it. You have all this information available to you. It's really trying to just make things easier for you to render a decision and for all parties to see the facts.
Okay, does FTB object to the exhibit that appellant had submitted yesterday?
No, we have no objection.
Oh, okay, thank you. Then I would admit the evidence to serve the interest of justice and to ensure a complete record. I will give this piece of evidence the appropriate weight in this hearing. So I would rename this exhibit that you submitted yesterday, Mr. Harbour, as exhibit number 5, and exhibit 5 would be admitted as evidence into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. FTB, moving on to FTB's exhibits, FTB has identified exhibits A through F and has no other exhibits to offer as evidence. Appellant has not objected to them in writing by December 30th, 2024, as notated in my minutes and orders. As such, exhibits A through F is admitted as evidence into the record. Does any parties have any questions? I'll start off with appellant.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And FTB, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Fantastic. All right. We will this oral hearing will begin. Mr. Harbour, you can begin your presentation for about 10 minutes. As a reminder, you will be offered a final statement after FTB's closing remarks. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. So really, this case is about abating a late payment penalty in an extraordinary 2020 tax year, muddled by the COVID pandemic. State Controller Betty Yee, who served in 2020 as the chair of FTB, stated, "We recognize what a challenging year this has been for Californians statewide. I'm pleased we're able to postpone tax filing and payment deadlines for all individual taxpayers in California to May 17. Hopefully, this small measure of relief will continue to allow people to focus on their health and safety and navigate the complexities caused by the pandemic." So my company, Amber Hill Land Company, is a small business owned and operated exclusively by our family of 4 and is our primary source of income. We conduct our business, including filing and paying our taxes, with the utmost business care and prudence. The nature of our real estate services business is choppy income from year to year due to a small number of land transactions with long sales cycles. Inconsistent income complicates tax estimation. 2020 through 2021 was an especially difficult period for our family to navigate through the COVID pandemic, including challenges with obtaining tax advice. Hear that, including challenges with obtaining tax advice. Our business recognized an extraordinary tax obligation in 2020, based primarily on an investment that matured in November 2020 and produced a substantial, roughly $475,000 long-term capital gain. It was the first time since Amber Hill Land Company incorporated in 2004 that it made this type of investment and realized this magnitude of capital gain. We used best efforts to accurately estimate taxes for the year, but we made an error during this difficult period. However, we had still timely paid $63,297 of our 2020 tax bill, which was over 4 1.3 times, 430%, our entire tax bill for 2019 of $14,749. This alone is a clear demonstration of our intent to timely pay our 2020 income tax bill in full. If this is not enough, it is important to point out that in 2020, the same tax year in question, we timely overpaid our total tax obligation to the IRS by $73,500. We overpaid that amount by $73,500. The late payment as the basis of the penalty under appeal was an anomaly in 2020, brought on by a combination of, hear me, one, the COVID pandemic that caused all sorts of business and domestic challenges for us. Two, an extraordinary business investment that matured in complicated tax estimation. And three, likely an error in allocation of tax payments between the IRS and California FTB. To further solidify that this partial late payment was an anomaly, I direct you to Exhibit 5, to the Harbour income tax summary for the 5 years 2018 through 2022. In every year from 2018 to 2022, we timely overpaid our tax obligation to the IRS. In every year except 2020, we timely overpaid our tax obligation to the California Franchise Tax Board. Therefore, in 9 of 10 instances, 90%, not only did the Harbors timely overpay their tax obligations, we applied those refunds to the next year, which means the IRS and the California Franchise Tax Board held material amounts of our money, not less than $31,000 in each of those 5 years in the case of the IRS, without interest or an option to offset a rare mistake like the subject late payment during an unprecedented COVID pandemic. Again, this is an anomaly that was due to reasonable cause and clearly not due to willful neglect. We respectfully request that the late payment penalty is abated and refunded to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harbour. I don't have any questions for appellants yet. I will hold my question after FTB's presentation. And let me move on to FTB. FTB, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Eric Brown, attorney for the Franchise Tax Board. Also appearing for the Franchise Tax Board is Cynthia Kent. Appellants have failed to establish reasonable cause to abate the late payment penalty for the 2020 tax year. Appellants timely filed their tax return within the extension period on October 15, 2021. They reported $21,174 tax due and remitted their payment 3 days later on October 18, 2021. FTB imposed a late payment penalty. Appellants paid the penalty and filed their claim for refund, which respondent denied. Once imposed, the late payment penalty can only be abated upon a showing of reasonable cause. In the present appeal, appellants assert that their underpayment was due to their inability to determine the amount of an extraordinary capital gain, which resulted from a transaction that concluded in November 2020. Appellants fail to indicate why they were unable to determine the amount of the capital gain and calculate their tax liability prior to May 17, 2021, the original due date. Moreover, appellants fail to show any efforts they undertook during the 6-month period to ascertain the amount of the capital gain or their tax liability. In the 2019 precedential opinion in Appeal of Morin, the Office of Tax Appeals held that an assertion that records were difficult to obtain without any substantiation of efforts made to retrieve those records or otherwise showing that they were unobtainable is not sufficient to show reasonable cause. Appellants argue that their favorable filing and tax payment history warrants abatement of the late payment penalty. However, filing and tax payment history is not a criteria for abatement of the late payment penalty, nor is it reasonable cause. Accordingly, appellants have failed to establish reasonable cause to abate the late payment penalty. In regard to the estimate tax penalty, appellants self-assessed and self-reported an estimate tax penalty, which they paid on October 18, 2021. Respondent notes that appellants have not made a direct argument in their appeal brief that the estimate tax penalty should be abated. However, appellants included the amount of the estimate tax penalty in their claim for refund, so respondent will briefly address this issue. It is appellant's burden to establish that they are entitled to abatement of the estimate tax penalty. In the present appeal, appellants have failed to present facts or legal argument to establish any grounds for abatement. Accordingly, they have failed to meet their burden to abate the estimate tax penalty. I will be happy to respond to any questions at this time.
Thank you. I have a question for appellant. Mr. Harbour, I wanted to go back to Exhibit 5 that you've this income tax summary schedule that you've presented to me. And I just wanted to clarify that the purpose of these numbers was just to show that you have a history of timely compliance, including some habitual overpayments carried forward as credits to subsequent years. Is that right, Mr. Harbour?
That's correct.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you say that again?
Yes, that is correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
And that's really because our income is very choppy, and if everything and generally we try to overestimate and overpay in to be safe. And in this case, because of that that large investment, there was land basis, there's a sale price, there's a lot of costs in between. Yes, I understand our obligation, and we're very conscientious about it. But in this case, we came up short, really related to that investment, which again was an outlier, an anomaly, and we've clearly demonstrated intent to timely pay to California Franchise Tax Board, and I think that exhibit helps portray that.
Thank you, Mr. Harbour. I don't have any further questions. Give me 1 second. All right. I just wanted to confirm with FTB that you do not have any closing remarks, and your presentation has concluded.
Yes, our presentation has concluded.
Oh, thank you. Appellant, Mr. Harbour, you will have the final statement, and please present your final closing statement and closing remarks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the Franchise Tax Board argument, it focuses on an opinion that we argue we could not have known our tax liability for 2020 until we filed our taxes in October 2021. We understand and regularly exercise ordinary business care and prudence to pay our tax obligation in full by April 15th. And during this challenging COVID period, the due date was extended to May 17th, 2021. In fact, we timely overpaid by $73,500 our total 2020 our income tax obligation to the IRS. If we willfully neglected our obligation to timely pay our 2020 FTB tax obligation in full, why then would we have timely overpaid the IRS in the same year by $73,500? The bottom line is we made an error in estimating our tax obligation as a result of a combination of the COVID pandemic that caused all sorts of business and domestic challenges, and an extraordinary real estate investment that matured in complicated tax estimation for us, and 3, likely an error in allocation of tax payments between the IRS and California FTB. However, in addition to the evidence and review of our track record that we've provided in our opening argument, we demonstrated good faith intent to timely pay our California income tax in full that year with a $50,000 extension payment to the California FTB on April 15th, 2021. Again, that was like almost 3.5 times of our total tax bill for 2019. The question is it appropriate in this case for the FTB to assess penalties and interest of close to $2,000 based on a late payment of $21,174 that was paid in full within 5 months of the May 17th due date, as soon as we filed our extended tax return, or as FTB attorneys have pointed out, it was within 3 days. The penalty and interest amounted to over 20% annualized based on the late payment amount, which is egregious in itself, especially in combination with the other evidence provided. I remind you that in every year from 2018 to 2022, we timely overpaid our tax obligation to the Fed. And in every year except 2020, we timely overpaid our tax obligation to California FTB. The overwhelming evidence points to an anomaly in tax year 2020 during one of the most challenging periods in our lifetime. It clearly demonstrates that we failed to timely pay our full tax obligation to FTB only in 2020, despite the exercise of ordinary business care and prudence. We absolutely intended to timely pay our 2020 tax obligation in full, as our track record proves. And despite coming up short, the anomaly of the late payment was due to reasonable cause and no way should be construed as willful neglect. We respectfully request that the late payment penalty is abated and refunded to us. Thank you. Happy to address any questions.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Does either parties have any questions before we conclude the hearing? I'll start off with FTB.
I have no questions, just a final comment.
Yes. Please, if you would want to begin your comment.
Yeah, the controlling law is that from the Morin presidential opinion. An assertion that records were difficult to obtain without any substantiation of efforts made to retrieve those records or otherwise showing that they were unobtainable is not sufficient to show reasonable cause. We hear of challenges, and certainly there were during COVID, but we haven't heard of any efforts to determine the tax liability by the due date, which was extended by California. That's all.
Thank you. And I want to give appellant the chance to also have the last say with regards to this comment. Do you have any response to that, Mr. Harbour?
Yeah, I've made my case clear. That just sounded like a canned response, but yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harbour. And okay, well, we're ready to conclude this hearing. This case is submitted today on January 14th, 2025. This record is now closed. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I will decide your appeal and send you a written opinion of the decision within 100 days. Today's hearing in this appeal of